Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Cornbread Trucker here, coming to you from somewhere in North New York State, up along the Canadian border. I cannot pronounce the town. Chattanooga. I have no clue. But I wanted to do a, I think I called the video 70-hour rule. It's going to be part 2. And the reason I want to talk about that some more is there's a driver that I'm going back and forth with a little bit, and I hear his point. You know, there's different ways that people drive for different reasons, but you know, his point on that 70-hour rule was, you know, the whole purpose of why they did it is because they didn't want drivers driving 7 days, 14 hours, you know, 11 hours a day, working 14 hours a day. And I mean, I know why they did it initially.
You have 5 hours and 47 minutes of remaining drive time.
But the thing of it was, you know, it really don't make much sense. You know, back when that came about, and I'll go back to the 80s when my dad drove, you know, companies would, they would dispatch you on a load that just got ordered and expect you to deliver it the day before it got ordered. You know, so drivers, you know, and sometimes I'm not even exaggerating on that. Or, you know, it'd be a load that was late, extremely late, and so it needed to be there, you know, basically at the same time she was picking it up. And so, you know, companies had a lot more, was able to push drivers more. The drivers were the ones that was held responsible, not so much the company. And so there was a lot of push. And of course, drivers also, you know, they wanted to make money. I can firsthand speak for my father, you know, running 3 logbooks and going days without sleep. I am not that, I can't do that. I can push really hard, and you know, there's, as an individual, you know, going on road trips with the family or whatever, there's times I'd been up, you know, 24 hours longer, you know, without any sleep. But by the time I started driving, the first company I drove a truck for, they had a computer system. It was you put almost like an 8-track. You'd plug it into the computer, and it would record your logs. You'd hit your statuses and stuff, and then when you got back to the yard, you'd have to take that out, take it into the office. They could print it out, and then you'd sign your logs. But you know, those kind of had more, there was kind of like timestamps. When I drove for rail transport, you know, we had a Qualcomm, and you know, you go through the scales at that time. You know, it would scan that whether you pull it in or not, there was a timestamp. So you really couldn't, not that there wasn't people still cheating on their logs, but it wasn't to the same extent. When I drove for M. Bringer, now that was a whole nother case. You know, we ran paper logs then, and you got away with what you got away with. There was, you know, it was kind of running like, in many ways, like my dad did. But today, you know, we're on these e-logs, and there's actually, and I'll come back to it. So, you know, my point was, whether you worked 11 hours, drove 11 hours every day, you still had to take a 10-hour break. Whether you worked 14 hours a day. And of course, realistically, you're not going to be driving 11 hours a day, working 14 hours a day. There will be days, no doubt about it. And depending on what your loads are, and there are probably some circumstances with maybe some of the local drivers and stuff. But, you know, today as drivers, we actually have more control over things. And for this gentleman, I believe that part of his thing is he likes to drive about 8-9 hours a day, and then I think he uses that 34-hour reset. You know, that's the way he wants to drive. Just because, let's say for instance, we somehow, us truck drivers standing together, got him to remove the 70-hour rule. That doesn't mean that that driver wouldn't be able to drive that way. I'll give you an example of my hours, and this is my total on-duty hours. 8 days ago, I worked 9 hours and 49 minutes. The day before that, 7 hours and 56, 10 hours 11, 10 hours and 40, 1 hour and 44 minutes, 9 hours and 55 minutes, 8 hours 36 minutes, and 5 hours and 16 minutes. That's so far the day, that 5 hours 16 minutes. So as you see, it's not as if I'm not getting anywhere close to that 14 hours. And it's, part of it is the way that I choose to drive, and some of it is just because of where I've got to stop, pick up loads, and drop loads. You know, there's just no, are there occasions that I could drive 11 hours a day, multiple days? Yeah. I still got to take a 10-hour break. And my whole argument was that just because you did a 34-hour reset does not mean that you're going to be any more rested than you would be. I personally feel better after having a day's work versus sitting around in the truck somewhere where I don't want to be. That wears me out more than being out and working. So one thought I had is, you know, sometimes you may need that 34-hour break. And because we're on e-logs, there's no reason that, for instance, on the OmniTrax or whatever system, that they couldn't put a software update that gives you a button that you can push that's, you know, says that within so much time of you pushing that, you have to have a 34-hour, you know, they have to give you a 34-hour break. Meaning your company, that the DOT could say, look, he needs a break, you got to give him a break. I mean, there's ways that can be fixed, and I think, you know, and that's probably more so for the company drivers, lease operators, owner operators. I mean, you have more control over things. Company driver, you know, is going to receive pressure from the company. There's, like I said, there's a way that can be fixed by just pushing a button and saying, the law says now that you have to give this driver a 34-hour reset or a 24-hour reset or something of that nature. And again, if you want to drive 8 hours a day, you know, that you can. Now, maybe as a company driver, you know, if they have places you need to get to and whatever, they may have more sway in how you drive. But again, at the end of the day, if you have a drive clock that's 11 hours and a max of 14 hours and you get your 10-hour break, I don't see it today, the 70-hour clock being relevant. But I know other people feel totally different about that. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on that. I'm going to do another video. We had a driver's meeting today, so I'm going to touch base a little bit on that. And we'll holler at you later. Have a good one.